Hello, everybody. I just want you to know that I'm starting my 31st year on the Hank Cisco show, and I have some other people stepping in for me. But I want to thank John Doyle. I want to thank the school district. And there's so many people I want to thank for what we're doing. Right now, I'm on my back because of cancer, but it's a 15-round bout, and I never lost a fight in the dressing room. But it's 31 years here doing this show, interviewing doctors, lawyers, teachers, laborers, everybody. And I want everybody to be happy. And I have some fill-ins, but I just want to thank everybody for the 31 years of happiness. And John Doyle, God bless him and everybody. So keep your eyes open for the Hank Cisco. Don't touch that dial.
Hi everyone, I'm Stan Casacio, and this is the Hank Cisco Show, the new season for 1920. Oh, but can we do that over again, John? Okay. Okay.
All right, stand by. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hi everyone, welcome to the new season of the Hank Cisco Show. I'm Stan Casacio, the host of that show. And before I start, I would like to thank everyone, the family of Hank Cisco. I'd like to thank everyone for their prayers, their thoughts, and stopping at the house to say hi to Hank while he's going through this difficult time. We all wish Hank well, and we look forward that we hopefully to see him at some point. Anyhow, today we have a very exciting show. We have the host of Travel Golfers Show, which is shown on NBC Sports. And he's also the host of Golf Talk Live, Tony Leodora. How you doing,
Thank you,
Tony?
Stan. Great to be with you.
Great to see you.
Been in this spot many times with Hank, and
Yeah.
I heard you're a very capable pinch hitter.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those kind words. But I got to tell you, the story I heard of how you got to meet Hank is really interesting because Hank was, you know, if anybody knows Hank, this is so Hank, it's unbelievable. Why don't you tell people that story?
Well, I had obviously...
How many years ago was this now?
This is way too many. It was 40 years ago.
Yeah, 1916?
It was, yeah. And I had just started after spending a few years as a part-time writer for the Times-Herald. I had been hired as the assistant sports editor and was only a couple of weeks into it, working under the legendary Red McCarthy, who had been sports editor there for many, many years. And all of a sudden, this hurricane blew through the sports department.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
Called Hank Cisco, and as I said, I had heard of him, but I had never met him before, and he came in like a whirlwind and was given all of his little sayings. He, you know, wanted to impress in his first showing, so he was, "Rock, you're ready, we're going to do this, we're going to do that." And I was just there a couple of weeks. I mean, I was overwhelmed already with all I had to learn, and I must have sat there through the entire little introduction to him and meeting him with my mouth open, my eyes popping out of my head. And finally he ran out, he says, don't worry, we're gonna do a lot of stuff together, and out he went. And I was still sitting there with my eyes open and my mouth open, and
Eyes popping out of your head.
yeah, and I looked over at Red McCarthy and I couldn't even get words out, and before I said anything, he said to me, "I've had him for the last 40 years, he's all yours now." So that started our great relationship, and well, we have done a million things together.
I know, and Hank's a very unique unique person, And one thing I've noticed, I actually had a carpenter who works for me, and he was a native of Norristown, and I mentioned Hank Cisco's name to him one time, and he said, "Hank Cisco, the police officer." I said, "Yeah, that Hank was a police officer." He says, "You know what? He kept me from going to jail." He said, when I was 16 years old, he stopped me and said, "You know what? You're going to jail if you don't stop this." And he said he straightened me right out. He said, I owe him a lot. And he was a great guy, but he was that type of person. He would see a young person and he would want the best for them.
Yeah.
And he would see a person like you or like me, and he said, you know, he wants to do the best for you. He wants to bring out the best in you. And he's a very interesting guy. So let me ask you this question. So you're in journalism, and I think it's important for the young people who are listening to this show and the young people who are filming this show. How did you get in journalism? What was that spark that got you into journalism?
Well, I don't know whether it was as much of a spark as it was
You had to eat.
happenstance. No, I took a huge pay cut. I originally wanted to be a coach. I mean, I love sports, and that's what I wanted to do, and I got a degree in teaching because that was, always the entree. You taught, and then you started moving up from there. And without going through all the details, because it was very, very confusing at the time, the stars just didn't align, and I started covering some games left and right. In college, my major was political science and history, and in my freshman year, in a English composition course, a professor who lived, by the way, within walking distance to Norristown High, he was a professor at Villanova, sent back one of my compositions. It looked like he bled all over the thing. And it was so traumatic that I went to incredible lengths to make sure that all of the courses I took after that, the professor didn't give essay exams. He gave, multiple choice or whatever. I mean, incredible lengths. I was so worried about that. Well, at the end of my sophomore year, you had to start taking your majors, and I took a U.S. history course in the second semester with a professor by the name of Dr. Nelson. At the end of our final exam, turned in my blue book, I had to do essay. He said, "Mr. Leodora, can you hang around? I'd like to speak to you."
Oh, and you're thinking the worst.
I said, I've got to go back. I flunked out of school. My parents are going to be so... And he said, "I'm working on a book. You're the best writer I have." He said, "Would you like to be a research assistant on it and maybe help rewrite some?" I said, "You're the right person here, He said, "No." And
It was like meeting Hank Cisco again.
it changed my whole philosophy. He gave me the courage and the fortitude to go ahead with a writing career. And as I wrote more and more, I felt that this might be a good substitute for coaching. And sure enough, the job opened at the Times Herald, and I became sports editor and lead columnist there. And I was lucky enough. I covered sports in Philadelphia in the '80s. Do you know how?
Yeah,
that was the gold rush of sports.
Right. And that was really almost the golden era of newspapers throughout the community, because
Absolutely.
there was 3 and 4 papers everywhere. I mean, people would buy papers to see
There
what's
were.
going on in their community. Today, that's
It's all gone.
It's all gone.
It's all gone. Journalism's dead, unfortunately. But at that time, we had a huge staff. We covered everything, and I personally covered, Phillies World Series, the Eagles in the Super Bowl, the Sixers after we owe you 1, owe you 2. Then they finally won their World Championship, 2 Flyers Stanley Cups, Penn State, 2 national championships, and Villanova basketball national championship in '85, all in that one era, plus 13 heavyweight fights, championship fights in Atlantic City. Joe Frazier, many times, talked with him and spent time with him, and I actually covered a fight that Hank refereed at the Spectrum with Roberto Duran.
Oh my God.
So.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So the story here is that, as a young person, not sure what they want to do, that they might have one target, but leave those doors open to possibilities of something else.
Right. And that's been my story of my life, as I've had to reinvent myself over and over again, because every few years I see myself standing on the bridge of the Titanic as it's about to go down, you know, singing Amazing Grace. The newspaper industry went dead. I then became magazine editor for a couple of big national golf magazines. And magazines started disappearing like crazy.
But then, okay, so now you're this editor and you're writing these columns on sports and everything else. Now all of a sudden, and I know you're a half decent golfer, or at least that's the rumor.
Not last a couple of weeks ago, but
we'll get
that
your
was it.
handicap a little higher, and then you and I will partner
okay.
up, and then we can win something together.
Right.
Okay, let's target that. But how did you transition from that, and then getting involved in this, which I'm very jealous, because I would like to do the world of golf travel, because not only do you play in some beautiful spots, but you know, eat and everything else, the food and all that stuff. And I think I mentioned to you the fact that, you know, golfers, we're all the same. We love to play golf, and then we love to party afterwards. And you've got to have the perfect job at this point.
I do. Again, the Times Herald was the entree to it, because Red McCarthy was an avid golfer, and he made me start playing.
So you go from this column in sports, and then you transition into this wonderful travel golf segment. Yeah. And as I like to say, you know, golfers, we love to play golf. We love to party afterwards. So you've got the perfect job as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly. You know, I worked some in television at the same time that I had started the Golf Talk Live radio show and syndicating that. And it just got bigger and bigger. And then 4.5 years ago, sitting at a national conference, at a break, we were sitting around a table, and somebody said, "I've seen your work on TV. Why don't you do your own show? You're all over the place. The radio show's taking you. Why don't you give that a try?" And I said, "Well, you know, I guess first off, I'd have to find a producer." Another guy at the table says, "I just retired from my commercial production job. I love golf. I'm ready to do something." Another guy at the table said, "Why don't you come up to my resort and do your pilot?" The next thing you know, well, one thing led to another.
And where was that pilot at?
At Crystal River on the west coast of Florida, up where you go and swim with the manatees and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it was a little resort, and then it went viral from there.
So take me through how you set the stage for where you're going to go, and what do you look for when you get there? How do you set that up? How do you set your crew up and everything else to do the show?
There are 3 different type destinations that we look for on the traveling golfer, because it is a golf and lifestyle show. Certainly, we want to go around and bring some of the iconic travel destinations to the golfers. Pinehurst, Myrtle Beach, Orlando, those type places. Other times, we want to go to the ones that people can only dream of going to, because they will vicariously go on a golf trip with us. And we've been to, and it's tragic to talk about it now, but we did one of the most spectacular shows from the Abaco Club on the island of Abaco. The rest of the island doesn't exist anymore.
I know, it's a tragedy. I actually saw that golf course. I wanted to go there.
It is absolutely spectacular. And the golf course and the clubhouse and those structures survived pretty well, because you know, the clubhouse was built to withstand, the rest of the island didn't. But you know, so we have those exotic ones, and we've done them from the Baja region of California, of Mexico. I'm sorry.
I've been there. California. Some of them are spectacular.
I actually did a segment in one of the shows standing on the southernmost tip of the entire Baja Peninsula, mile marker 0. And on one side of me was the Sea of Cortez, the other side, the Pacific Ocean, and behind me, the next piece of land was Antarctica. Mm-hmm. So, you know, those kind of exotic places are the other thing. And then there's the third, and it's the discovery one. It could be the everyday golfer's place that you never thought of going. We just did a show from Clay County, Florida. It was a very rural region west of Jacksonville, inland, and it has now sort of morphed into a more upscale bedroom community of Jacksonville. But I've gotten more comments out of that, people saying, I go down that way, and I've never thought of going over there. That's a perfect pit stop on the way to
Wherever they're going in Florida.
Naples or whatever. So that's it. So there's the exotic, the discovery, and the iconic. And those places, the mixture of them, and I have to be careful. You do too many of one or the other, it starts to bore the people. But the mixture of them keeps the people watching. They don't know what they're going to see the next month on the television show, and sort of appeals to all the different class of golfers.
So you get there, and then you give a little spice of life as to what's going around the golf course, where some of the restaurants are, things of that nature. You may stay. How long would you stay there? Maybe a week.
It typically takes us 3 days to shoot a show, and that's 3 long days, many hours of shooting on the golf course, interviewing the people, and of course interviewing the people in attractions, entertainment, food, all of the different type of things that make a golf trip special. You know, you don't do that in other sports. You know, nobody takes sorry Hank, but nobody takes a boxing trip.
That's true. That's
Right.
true. That's true.
Or if somebody goes away to play tennis just to enjoy some better weather, they never come back and say, you should have seen the tennis court I just played on.
That's right.
Well,
Yeah, they
what
kind of
was
all look the
different about
same.
it? Yeah,
right. They're all flat, and they have lines on it with
Yeah.
a net. That's about it. Right?
Exactly,
You got it.
Stan,
You got it.
That's it. So, you know, you want to tell all of those other things to make the golf trip. And we have done on either the radio show, the television show, or both, we have done golf and baseball trips to spring training. We've done golf and football trips to Notre Dame. That was really something special. We did a golf and auto racing trip one time up to the Poconos with Fuzzy Zeller. He owned an Indy car, and we had a great time. Did that
He
kind of thing.
has to be a lot of fun because he was a pretty humorous guy.
He's a riot.
I absolutely.
he is an
like every
absolute
other line
riot.
out of him is funny.
Yeah.
You know, one of
Yeah,
those type
really.
of guys. I have a dear friend of mine had to go to China for business, and he decided to play golf. And have you been there? He said the golf courses there were there's these beautiful golf courses there that they have. They've become capitalist in China to a certain degree.
Yeah, two big points to that. No, I've not been to China. My very, very good friend Ron Garl, one of the great golf course architects in the world, has done so many courses in Florida, the islands, Thailand, Panama, Nigeria, Morocco, and China. Did a course there, and he talked all about it. They actually built like a dam out in the ocean and reclaimed an extra 17 acres from the ocean and to build this golf course along the water there. So, I mean, some of the projects are so over the top. The other end, and you know, they have been capitalists and they've gotten more people playing golf. The other end was I played in Scotland. First day I played at St. Andrews, had an awful experience, unfortunately, bad caddy. Went to King's Barnes the next day, my favorite course in Scotland. And one of the guys went up to the caddy master and said, you know, this guy put the trip together for us. I felt bad. Boy, he really had a rotten caddy. The guy said, don't worry, I'll take care of you. So all of a sudden, I get a tap on my shoulder, and the guy says, I'm your caddy. And I looked, and there was this kid from China. I'm in Scotland. I said, where did this come from? He goes out and takes us, and he was amazing. He knew everything about the golf course, every pebble, everything.
Did he have a Chinese brogue?
He did not have a brogue, no, but he did have a slight Chinese accent. But it turned out he was a student at the university in Edinburgh and learning golf management or whatever. And as the day went on, I realized he was an incredible caddy, except in one thing: reading putts. He was bad. If it was a flat putt, he was fine. If it was downhill, he'd have trouble. He would underread the break because he wouldn't understand that downhill they break
Right,
more.
right, right.
If it was an uphill putt, he would overread it, not realizing that they break less. And finally, I said to him, I said, you know, everything was great. He said, really, everything good? I said, everything was great. I said, reading the putts a little bit, I said, you know, when you play, he said, I have to be honest with you, I've never played golf.
Oh my God.
His parents managed a golf course in China, but they weren't allowed to play, and he had never played. He had hit balls, and he had learned the game, and that's it. So it's a little bit different
Yes,
over
a little
there.
bit. I know that the Chinese themselves, I mean, you see some of the women, top LPGA women are Chinese golfers, and some of them are very, very good at what they do.
Absolutely.
And it's amazing. But he had a wonderful experience in China on the golf courses, and then afterwards they gave him a massage. Him and his wife had food. I mean, he said it was like the most unbelievable thing that he went through. So I've got that on my to bucket list, is to go to the Great Wall and play golf by the
Yeah,
Great Wall.
when they shorten the flight, I'll go. I'm travel weary now,
Travel.
so I'm sort of backing off on these long flights. I took the longest flight in the world one time to go on a golf trip to South Africa. It was New York, the longest nonstop flight, New York to Johannesburg. All you do is stop on this island that literally is a gas station off of the nose of
Near the-
Africa.
oh, yeah.
Get out of the plane, stand there, they fill it, you get back on, and you keep going. So it was 19 hours, New York to Johannesburg. I'm done.
Yeah, done. Well, you know, my wife and I had a house in Hawaii for like 20 years, and we would take that flight, and it was anywhere from 16 to 18 hours door to door. So I understand about those long flights.
I noticed you say you had
Yes,
a house.
yes. Well, you know, it was time to move on, because we want to be like you, go to all these different golf courses, and maybe we'll start our own travel show.
All right.
Anyhow, you know, what you talked about the golf course in the Bahamas. If you were to pick all the years you've been doing this, what to you was the most exotic golf course? If you could close your eyes and picture yourself, where would that be right now?
Oh, most exotic golf course. Well, I have to put in a couple of categories. My favorite in Ireland is Ballybunion. I just absolutely love that golf course to death, and it's on the ocean, and it has those big hills. And the favorite in Scotland was King's Barnes, but I guess most exotic was the course that I wrote about 20 years ago that no one had ever heard about, and it caught on as the greatest golf course in the world that nobody's ever heard about. It's called Playa Grande. It's on the north coast of the Dominican Republic in a very, very remote area. It was built by Robert Trent Jones. They started construction in the 70s. It didn't open until 1998.
Holy cow.
Typical infrastructure,
Sure, yes,
political,
you did
all
that.
kinds of
Yeah,
problems.
the Caribbean is that way.
Yeah, many, many, many stories all about it. It finally opened. You see the ocean from all 18 holes. 11 of the 18 holes are directly on the ocean on cliffs about 100 feet above the ocean. And it's on the north coast, which is the rough coast.
The rough side.
So the waves splash there and crash up over top of the cliffs. And it is really, really an amazing, amazing golf course. And I played many rounds there, so I really got the feel of the entire area. It was about as exotic as you could get. The guy who owned it was a Cuban by the name of Benny Guevara, who was the owner of Allegro Resorts. And they had an Allegro resort there, and he wanted to learn to play golf, so I was down there teaching him and working with the caddy program there, teaching the caddies to speak English, speak golf English, learn how to caddy. And then he all of a sudden got an offer, and he sold Allegro Resorts and that property and made settlement on September 1st, 2001. Got his check. How lucky was he?
Yes, very
10
lucky.
days later, the entire golf travel industry went to zero. And that place collapses. So did many other places. And it has made a comeback. Reese Jones came in and did a renovation, and a company out of New York built a boutique hotel there, and you can stay there for about $1,000 a night. And,
Enjoy the golf course. I will tell you, one of the most interesting golf courses we ever played, we happened to be in Hawaii. It was up in the mountains, in the Kula Mountains, right above Honolulu. You go through there, and it's at a very high altitude, and sometimes you can't play because the fog's so bad and the clouds come down. And we drove in there, a beautiful golf course, views unbelievable. And the guy said, "How many golf balls did you bring with you?" And I said, "Well, I've got like maybe 6 golf balls with me." And I'm a half-decent player, you know. My handicap at times has been under 10. I've been as low as a 5. So my wife's an excellent golf player. She's a club champion and things like that. And he said, "Well, what's your handicap?" And at the time it was like an 8. "Well, you'll need at least 8 golf balls." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Because this course, whatever your handicap is, how many golf balls you're going to lose." And let me tell you, I lost 8 golf balls.
No kidding.
Yes.
Oh, my God.
Because if you were outside the fairway, you were looking down a 200-foot cliff.
Yeah.
You weren't going to go chase that golf ball. But it was pretty spectacular. So those are the crazy things. I guess there's something else that happens when you're in this industry because of all the famous people that have played golf over the years. You know, the Bob Hopes and the Bing Crosbys and you know, Kiss. Those guys play golf. All these guys play golf at this point. Who would be one of the most famous person you ever interviewed or was with? Like Donald Trump, maybe? You haven't got to Donald yet?
No, but I did have the interview and actually broke the story about the woman who turned him down on a marriage proposal.
Oh.
2 years ago, the U.S. Women's Open was at Trump Bedminster in New Jersey, and as our preview show, the week before that, I interviewed Jan Stevenson, just recently inducted into to the World Golf Hall of Fame, and they were protesting outside of Trump Bedminster, as they protest everything, and that was a bone of contention with some of the players that found it, you know, distracting. They don't want to be involved in that. So I asked Jan about it, and she said, "Well, it's horrible. It shouldn't be part of the Women's Open. Let these girls come and play golf. Let them, you know, compete. It shouldn't be any part of it at all." And I said, "Well, you would understand as well as anyone." And she said, "Yes, I dated Donald Trump," and that was the first time that ever was made public. And it turned out she was in Atlanta playing in a tournament. She got a message to come to the airport. She went there. There was a jet waiting for her. The pilot was there. The gangplank was down. There were roses up there and on all the seats and a big sign in the back, "Jan, will you marry me?" And she looked at the pilot. She said, "Where's he?" He said, "He got held up on business in Paris. He wants you to go there and fly there and marry him in Paris." She said, "And he sent you to ask me?" And he said, "Yes." She says, "Well, I'm going to send you back, and you give him this message. You tell him to go to..." and that was the end of their relationship. She harbors no feelings toward him, and she said that he was always the ultimate gentleman, but she broke that story right on Golf Talk Live. But
by the way, I tried that with my wife, you know, and, but she didn't turn me down. She didn't turn me down. She finally accepted.
But you know, I've been really lucky over the years. I mean, I've played golf with Joe DiMaggio. I played golf with Arnold Palmer. I've done many interviews with Arnold Palmer, and
I hear he was a great interview.
He was terrific and such a gentleman. Go out to Latrobe and you know, really enjoyed those very special interviews. You mentioned Fuzzy Zeller. There are some very funny ones. We did one at his golf course in Indiana, just across the river from Louisville, Kentucky, on the weekend that he debuted his Fuzzy's Ultra Premium Vodka. And for the premiere of it, he had John Daly, Rocco Mediate, and Boo Weekley as his guests for the weekend. And then on the Monday, they played a game of Wolf, which is a sort of a betting game. And they had all carts with speakers, and they followed them around the golf course, and they were mic'd up, and it was absolutely hilarious.
I could imagine. There's the 3 pretty good guys.
And, yeah, and all 4 of them, they had us laughing through it, and then I had to do some interviews after, and there's a pretty famous interview that Daly did. They had to bleep out part of it.
Part of
but,
it. That sounds like John.
Rocco-
Especially after a few vodkas,
Yeah.
I'm sure he was like really good.
But Rocco Media he insisted on staying in the room for the interview, and he was listening while he was sitting on one of those inflated balance balls in Fuzzy's office. And when Daly dropped that line, he laughed so hard he fell
back.
backwards into the bookcase, and all of Fuzzy's books fell on top. He was lucky he wasn't hurt. On top of Rocco, he's laying on the floor.
I hope you
with all
got that
this-
on film.
We didn't get it on film. It was
Oh,
radio.
jeez.
Well, we got it on tape. You heard.
You heard
what
the-
happened, and it was pretty funny.
Well, I'd like ask you one question before we end the interview. What is on the future for the Golf Traveler Guide this season? This season. Where will be some of the places that you will be taking people?
Well, one of them's close to home. We're actually doing two shows, two traveling golfer television shows from Aronimink as an advance to the KPMG Women's PGA Championship, which will be played the end of June next year. So as sort of a welcome to the country, working in partnership with Aronimink, KPMG, the sponsor and
Right.
PGA of America, and Visit Delco, the tourism
Group.
body for down there. We're doing two shows. One will air in October and the other in April. We just finished shooting the one, and it's going to be sort of a welcome to the country. When you come here, here's what you can do while you're in Philadelphia watching the tournament and all the other things. And I mean, I had to do it all. I had to go into the cheesesteak places and the hamburger places, the things in Delaware County, some of the great
So
restaurants.
you gained about 6 pounds during that shoot.
I didn't. The day I did that, I went to 5 restaurants in one day, the entire day, in and out of them, and I didn't have a single bite of anything. I just couldn't get started on that. I said that would have been a big problem. Not that I didn't want to, but you know, they're iconic places.
Yes, yes. So let me ask you this one further question, that is, where do people go to watch your show, listen to your radio show? How do we get into that?
Traveling Golfer is on NBC Sports and NBC Sports Plus, the 2 channels in Philadelphia, and it's on a number of times during the week, all different times, 10:30 on Sunday. You can find out those times by going to our website, travelinggolfervideo.com.
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 And you'll see that on the bottom of your screen, so you can pick it up.
And that will show you the times for all of the shows, as well as archived right on there. You can watch any of the shows at any time, all the way back 4.5 years ago to the very first show. They're all on there. The radio show is on a number of stations. The flagship station is WNTP right in Lafayette Hill, 990 AM. It's also carried on WNPV out of Lansdale, Bucks County, Lehigh Valley, that on 98.5 FM and 1400 AM, and it's also on WOND.
So and
in
all these
Atlantic
stations
City.
and all these stations are streamed, so they can pick this stuff up
You
on
can
the
find it also online, or just go to golftalklive.net.
Well, I'd like to thank Tony for coming in and telling us about golf and all the different places. I can't wait to check out some more of his shows so I know where to check off and go. And hopefully Tony and I can get in a tournament together when our handicaps get up and we can win it. So I'd like you all to thank you for visiting us today and tuning in the show. I'd just like to leave you before we leave and sign off. One of Hank Cisco's famous sayings, there are 2 things that are bad for your heart: running upstairs and running down people. So with that, I'd like to wish you all well, and we'll see you next week for the next Hank Goes Cisco show. Thank you.